Welcome to the CXO and CHRO Walk into a Bar, where we share insights at the intersection of talent and revenue. Dive into a unique narrative with our hosts, Michelle Strasburger, the insightful CHRO, and Dominique Sanfleur, the visionary CXO. Together, they bring dynamic perspectives that ignite thought-provoking dialogue from the C-suite. Each week, join us for electrifying sessions that confront the very challenges modern CXOs navigate in today's fast-paced business landscape. When split-second decisions loom, must it be talent or revenue that takes the hit? Or is there a harmonious crossroad where both can thrive? Can we blur the lines between talent and revenue? In every episode, we provide executive leaders with 3 strategic takeaways, transformative insights that will propel you to master the delicate balance between people and profit. It's not about winners or losers, but crafting an environment where everyone triumphs. Tune in and step closer to redefining executive success.
It worked.
There we go.
This is a test.
We figured it out. You figured it out.
It was a fast week. We're back again.
We're wearing the same outfits as a couple minutes ago.
Thanks for pre-recording because I will be on vacation next week. So we're pre-recording, so we can't answer your chat questions if any pop in. But this is a great topic. So today we are talking about getting senior leaders set up for success.
Very important topic.
Something we don't talk about, which is super, super excited. I'm excited for this topic. Very excited for this topic.
It's a very important one. To your point, Michelle, it's not discussed enough, and glad to dive into it with you.
Very excited to be here. So welcome, everyone. I'm Michelle Strasburger. I am the CEO of HR Rebooted. We work with organizations to help build intentional cultures so that they can scale without losing their soul.
And I am Dominique Sanfleur, CEO of Intramark. We built software in a process as a smoke detector to execution risk, giving leaders early visibility into people factors that quietly disrupt execution.
I love that, smoke detector.
You got to have it. It's required by law. I love that. It's life-saving. So
it should be required by law. And I think in this instance, it should be because, organizations invest so much money. And I've worked very closely with executive recruiters over my career to hire key executive roles, CTOs, CIOs, CFOs. They are key roles in organizations, important roles in organizations. You have to get it right. There's a huge cost to bringing them in. There's a huge cost if you get it wrong. There's so many people depending on it. There's teams anxiously waiting for these people to come into these roles. And then we just kind of say, here's your office, here's your computer, good luck. Team meeting starts at noon. We'll see you there. It's interesting. We just expect them to be turnkey as if we're buying a Porsche.
Very, very good point. It's an expensive investment like a Porsche, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a very good point there is the organization's making a huge investment and bringing on a senior leader that's going to impact culture and direction of the organization, but also results, right? So whether or not this senior leader sinks or swims, you don't want to take it with the attitude of like, oh, let's see if they sink or swim. If they sink or swim, that hurts a lot of people, right? And impacts whether or not things get done on time. Or the organization's meeting its results and goals so it's a huge investment that surprisingly not a lot of investment, into the success of that executive at times is made, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of investment is made hiring that executive, getting them in the organization such that the argument can be made there's not a lot of budget left to invest in extra stuff to make sure they get up to speed as quickly as possible, so that they can accelerate time to impact. And so it's a tricky situation where you're making a big investment. You've already made a big investment attracting this executive, investing in their onboarding, if you will, so that they get the best information as quickly as possible so that they can make the biggest impact. That assumption that they should be turnkey and they should drop into your organization like they drop into any other organization that you would want them to be in, and they should just figure it out and do it as quickly as possible. Unless it's an executive that's in the business of doing that and has reps of specifically dropping into environments where, think about a PE environment, right? Where they have operators that they spend their careers, and that's that process that unless it's something like that, which is not most of the cases, then really you're dropping in a senior executive that isn't turnkey. They might position themselves as, but it's really not a turnkey situation. It's a unique situation, and it's a unique situation where that unique individual will impact that organization's culture uniquely and how things operate going forward, and whether or not results and outcomes are met at the timelines that the organization wants to meet them. So, very big investment.
Yeah. Yeah. In the past, I've done things, not extra special, but more of like let's wine and dine them. Let's make sure that they feel special, included, but not anything to help them get up to speed faster. I have on my own, and when I'm starting a new position, have met with the CEO ahead of time. But there's usually nothing that helps people get up to speed faster other than the traditional onboarding. They may meet with team members, like peers, to help understand the organization. They may jump into the executive team meetings, and hopefully they ask questions. If there are materials like, here's some of the keywords we use, or our lingo in the organization that we use that maybe is provided to other people. But I think a lot of times they're expected to have their own tool belt that they come in with, so that they use. So it'd be interested to hear from others in the audience, are there unique things that they've used? And I don't know if I'm allowed to put you on the spot here, Don, but you and I had an interesting conversation of maybe some things that they could do, that organizations can do. And you had some thoughts about it. Last week, I think we spoke about this. I don't know if you're open to hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm thinking about the right thing, and before I jump into that, you're touching on it, right? New executive, there's a lot of risk with them coming in and around them, right? There's a lot of risk. One is a huge investment. Organization has to see an ROI on that. They have to have, speed to impact. And although that's what the organization wants and that's what the leader wants, there are still some risks around that, right? So if I put myself in the shoes of a new leader coming into an organization, what's everybody doing around me, right? They're positioning. There's a lot of filtering and posturing. And I, as a new leader going into a new environment, dealing with people I've never met before, I've got to filter through as quickly as possible all these things. And one could say, well, that's the job of a new leader, is quickly, filter. Sure, but every environment is different. Every new leader is different, and it's really, even with an established leader, right? Managers below them that manage up really well. That's even tough for them to see past, layer, below that to see if there are any issues, right? Let alone a new leader that, again, a situation where a lot of people are highly incentivized to manage up, very quickly, very well. It's a fresh start for everybody in perception, and everybody's just kind of gearing. So all this noise is happening around this new leader, and it's up to them to, sift through almost an impossible situation of sifting through, noise to figure out what's what. And the quicker that they can do that, the better, which I believe where Vibe could be very, very helpful is going in conjunction with a new leader into an environment. And Michelle, is this the direction. Yes. Going into an environment in tandem with the new leaders to help them get early visibility into the unfiltered truth, right? Because a lot of positioning, a lot of posturing, a lot of managing up is happening, especially around when a new leader is introduced, who's also having their own influences on culture that they may not be aware of, right? And so there's a lot of dynamics that are happening, and having a mechanism in place to help that leader get unfiltered, view insights and factors that may be impacting execution early on is going to be, super essential in helping them accelerate time to impact in that role.
I love that. And understanding some of the biases that are already out there as far as like what that, I mean, I've gone into situations where like I have a client right now where there's an HR manager who just doesn't like me because she doesn't like the decision that was made that brought me into the organization. I had nothing to do with that decision, but she's not happy with the decision that happened before me and that brought me there. And like, it would be good to know some of the history before coming in, and it would help build that relationship. Right. And so, like some of that history, some of that bias, you can kind of filter out with Vibe and have that ahead of time and be able to speak to that. And it would help bring that person up to speed easier. That would be super helpful, instead of like, here's the keys, here's your office, here's your team. And when you have a team of 5 people or 3 people, it's easier. And especially when you're coming as a CTO, that team is typically directors or vice presidents. And there is some posturing there and some political stuff, but sometimes there's a level of professionalism that's a little bit easier to get through. But when you get into different layers of the organization, sometimes it's harder to break. Yep. So I think being able to get into the different layers of the organization and really understand the complexities of the organization that you're coming into is really important. And I think that would be a great use of the Vibe tool to really understand and dig in, like, where's the friction in the organization? Where are the real challenges? Where are the real strengths? And how do we continue to build on those so we can keep those strong as we start to invest more in these other areas as well?
Yeah. And, from a news leader's perspective, right, you want to trust but verify, right? You're being told a lot of things, and you trust your team and you want to build trust, and that's definitely important. But people, to your point, Michelle, have their own biases, perspectives on all this stuff, and being able to dig in a layer deeper or 2 layers deeper or as many layers you need to get, unfiltered perspective on, and additional, it's all about context, right? To get additional context into what's really driving some of these current situations. And, there's a story, right? And instead of being told that story from one person who has all the incentive in the world to give you a story in a very certain way, to get the story yourself so that you could see it from multiple angles, right? So you could get the real context. And it's about getting the story from a 360-degree angle rather than just relying on one source to explain to you why things are the way that they are, and whether or not that adds or helps your confusion is debatable. But the last thing that you want as a leader is to be told a story and there are other undercurrents that you would love to know about, that you should know about, that is going to probably catch you by surprise at some point, especially when you're in a period where you're trying to build credibility and understanding and trust with your team. Understanding the full story around what's going on in that environment is super helpful. And having, folks like you, Michelle, step in to help them navigate through that, right? So, Vibe would get them the full story, that follow through, and this, the what you do with that is going to be super, super helpful. Because again, where organizations tend to drop the ball is that follow through. Vibe helps with managing the follow through process, but it really takes a fresh set of eyes and great advisors to help navigate, advisors that have seen things from a variety of angles, right? To again help that leader navigate some of those more tricky and sticky situations, especially when they're new, right? So it's like questions like, how do I get in the middle and dispel this political situation that's happening between Bob and Susie, and I'm new, and I'm still trying to build trust with Bob and Susie, but I don't want to take sides. But I need Bob and Susie to really get on board. Bob might be in the wrong, or Susie might be in the wrong, or maybe it's somewhere in the middle. But I need to be able to handle that situation well, especially as a new leader, without looking like I'm taking sides, with two people, or playing favorites with two people I really need on board to help execute, right? So there are tricky things like that folks like you jump in and help leaders navigate through. So yeah.
I think there's two parts of this too. I think one, when you're interviewing as a executive level person, you're getting, and you meet with other executives, but you're usually getting one side of what's expected in the role, right? You're getting the executive, and you talk to the board, probably, what's the board level expectation? What is the CEO level expectation? And what are my peers' expectations? With this approach, right, of getting more well-rounded level expectations, you're getting more of a 3D picture of what are the expectations, what is the full picture of this role, and what am I walking into, as far as like what's going to be expected of me, and what am I going to have to work with, which I think sets the person up for success. Like they know more of what they're coming into, and they can understand whether it's something they want to do or not. I also think the timing of doing something like this can be really important. And I know when we do, when we ask employees for feedback, we typically want to do it when we can act on it. But we may want to think about doing something like this before we actually start the search, and tell the employees or whoever we're asking feedback for that we're going to use this as a starting point, to gather feedback to help inform the search, and then also use it to help onboard the person, so that we may not be able to act on the feedback right away, unless there are things we want to act on right away because there's an emergency. But we're going to use it to inform the search, and then we're also going to use it to make sure the person's effectively onboarded. And that way, because there may be things we find in this feedback process that we didn't know about. And wow, I'm glad we learned that, because we really want this person to act on this. And we really think this is a key initiative that needs to be done in the next 16 months or 6 months or whatever. And this needs to be part of the skill set this person brings in, or, whatever. But we make that part of something that we might not have added to the search before.
I think that's a really good point, right? It's any incremental benefit you can make or add into your requirements and on who you're looking for and what you're gearing them up to address. There are definitely things organizations may not know that a new leader could step in and to speak of the consequences of not having, for a leader stepping into a role and not having good information, right? Unfiltered information, the full story, 360-degree story, is that their potential, the fewer mistakes that they have to make, the better for the organization. And their failure in that role would mean, and this is a term from you, Michelle, the domino effect, right? Is that leader just doesn't fail in isolation. That failure will impact a lot of things. Not only the investment that the organization made in that person, the time and opportunity costs, but also any timelines and goals, culture, and confidence. That's in everybody around them, right? So that's a big morale and motivation issue that then that becomes, because now you've got to look for another, for a new leader, start the whole process over again. You're dealing with a bunch of delays, and now you have more people questioning, is the organization on the right path? And so making those senior level hires, huge investments, but huge risk for the organization, and not having things in place to ensure as much as possible to, for that leader's success, is really taking an investment and just kind of gambling it, unnecessarily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's important to think about, how do we, we're investing all of this money in bringing this person on board. How do we make sure that we are onboarding them after we write the check effectively, so that we don't have to do this again, right? And so that we're getting our money's worth, so that we're getting the ROI, and not just assuming they've got a briefcase full of tricks that they can come and just use and make everything better. They probably will, right? That's why you're hiring them, but you can probably get them up to speed quicker, and then they can open up their suitcase full of tricks quicker, and be effective quicker.
Yep. And it's all about time to impact, right? You want that leader to be up and productive as quickly as possible, and information, right information, unfiltered information, is gonna be gold in that situation. So can you get unfiltered information to that executive as quickly as possible? That's the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game.
Yeah, I felt in my last corporate role, I felt that it was a pretty complex business, and the way we operated with our systems and processes. And I look back on them now, and I felt they were great. I mean, we had a pretty agile process at the end, but there was a lot of work and stuff. I felt like it took me a good 6 months to feel like I had my legs underneath me. And I would tell new hires that, like, it took me, and a lot of the executive team said the same thing. So it wasn't just me. What could we have done differently to help people get up to speed quicker? Right? Are there things we could have done to help people get up to speed quicker? Could we have done something like the Vibe process? That would have been fantastic to get people in there quicker, to use their tools.
Yep. Again, information's king. Information, the quality of the information that you have is going to be, is good. And unfortunate, the advent of a new leader is that in itself presents a lot of risk for that leader, right? And the organization. It's a very risky situation. It's necessary, right? You got to, get a new leader to help push the organization forward, but it's a very risky junction, right? Because it's a huge investment. But the situation itself provokes, information. That's one of those situations where information gets guarded the most, or positioned the most, or massaged the most. And, people are trying to package themselves and the work that they're doing, or the situation that's around them. That's kind of some of the where getting the full story or the honest truth is a challenge, especially for someone who's not familiar with the environment, right? And so it's bad enough with an established leader, but in a situation where, again, people are trying to position themselves in the best light, as they should, but that in itself presents quite a bit of risk for a senior leader that has to step into that, make decisions, build trust, all of these things that have to happen, and meet goals all at the same time. Interesting situation.
Mm-hmm. I also find if you have a group of leaders that are newer to the organization, they're coming up together, and that helps them kind of come up together. But if you have a lot of leaders that have been there for a long time, they have all that historical knowledge, or in industry for a long time, they have all that historical knowledge together. It's much harder for that newer person to get up to speed, because they don't have that same knowledge. So like everybody's speaking the same language, and then that person's on the outside.
Yep.
So, how do you transfer that knowledge to them so that they can get up to speed quicker and move quicker, so that they can be part of that, especially if they're coming, like if it's an industry thing and they're from outside the industry, how do you transfer that knowledge so that they can get into, be part of the group, so they can get there.
A great option for that, right, for that specific situation, for a leader who's going into an industry that they're not familiar with, which happens, and they're coming in. What an organization can do to help a leader in that situation is connect them with an expert network. There are a few of them out there where they can have some time with an industry leader, someone who, and really very quickly get up to speed on what is the language, right? And what does this mean, right? And they can ask those quote unquote dumb questions to an expert who has the time to give them, right? Instead of pulling Bob or Sally aside, who's got their own project to do and try to ask a ton of questions to get up to speed on the industry. They can do that ahead of time as much as possible with experts that are dedicating time to do that. And I think expert networks are a great option that's carved out for it. Another option is, of course, to tap into your network of friends who can lend you some time, who are in the, deep knowledge in the industry. That's always a great option. But if that's not available to you, and that's not always available, to find industry experts specifically in your space who can give you the perspective, expert network is a great option for that. And so organizations can think about really equipping their new leaders with an expert network session or two to help them get up to speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback. Look within your industry, within your network. I think it's important to think about, like, let's not just bring them in and give them the keys to the office and their computer and move on. Like, what can we do to get them up to speed, and what areas do they need to get up to speed, right? They'd be an expert within their areas, HR, IT, tech, finance, operations. But if they need other areas, they're new to your business, they're not going to speak your language. They might be new to your industry, right? They're new to the team. What are the things we need to make sure that they can get integrated quickly and trained up so they can be effective quickly?
Yeah. And one of the ways to define effective, or that helps build momentum, right? Because part of this as well is like you want them to build momentum quickly and then make an impact, right? And then usually you want to start with quick wins. And I think the challenge and the risk of not having the right information is that you go pursue the wrong quick win. You think it's quick win, but it just kind of falls flat with most people, or, it's kind of position, kind of like, it's this classic thing with, for example, an analogy to this is like a startup, right? I have a great idea. Here's what it is. And people will tell you, oh, it's a great idea. But when you ask them to buy, that's when they're like, I don't know. So that happens, it's a kind of like dynamic that's common in the startup world. But there are elements of that where, again, people will tell a leader that XYZ is a great idea, because who's going to push back on the new leader, right? Especially when you're posturing and you want to get on, so you might, if without the right information, you're going to get false signals on what's a good idea, because people don't want to upset you, or they want to keep you happy, or they want to encourage you along, or whatever it may be. So if you stand the risk in a new environment where again, you might get the wrong signals on what's the right quick win, that's only going to slow down momentum, because you need information that's going to give you that's going to help inform the accurate quick wins that are going to actually be quick wins for that leader.
Mm-hmm. I would also say too, I had a CEO that was great at this, and there was this little restaurant in town that just made the best smoothies, and he would just always go get a smoothie, and he just invited any one of us to go get a smoothie with him. So we had walking meetings to go get a smoothie all the time. And so he just did a great job of building relationships with his direct reports. And because of that, and I grew up in technology, this was my kind of first real experience within manufacturing and distribution. So I asked him a lot of stupid questions, and he would laugh at me because he's like, you obviously have a lot to learn about it. But I felt so comfortable with him that I could ask these stupid questions and learn about the industry, because he just made me comfortable, because we just went for a walk and got smoothies. But like, spend the time with them, right? With your new hires, and just build that relationship. You don't have to go get a smoothie, but just go for a walk or bring them to lunch, or just make time, because we move so fast and we just assume they're going to know, but there might be stupid questions that they won't ask because you're not making the time to spend with them. So I think that's really important, to spend time with your direct reports. You've invested all this money, invest the time with them.
I will add on that, in that schedule, fit in a few walking meetings with a few levels below your direct reports.
Mm-hmm.
You know, have a walking session with the frontline XYZ or the IC, whatever it is. Not only to build relationships and so on and so forth, but that's also another opportunity to get a different perspective and a deeper perspective of what's happening, you know, under that layer, right? It's like kind of like ice, right? You can walk on the ice and there's only so much you can see, you know, below it, but you speak with a few people below that ice level, or your direct reports, then you can see the fish. That's, you know, you can see the plants, and it's a whole different world, right? And it's a whole different reality. Otherwise, you don't know how deep that ice is. Maybe it's just there's nothing under it. There's just dirt, or it's a whole body of life that you wouldn't have known about, right? And so, a few of those walking sessions can be with. Definitely, most of it should be with your direct reports and peers, but see what's beneath the ice, you know, by having a few of those sessions with people you may not expect. You know, maybe you're the new chief marketing officer and you pull Sally or Bob, who is, you know, frontline payroll manager or frontline payroll, whatever, right? There are different pockets of the organization that you may not expect that has information of how, the information that's helpful in understanding the dynamics of the organization that doesn't always sit in your function or, you know, peer level. That will be helpful to have.
Doesn't cost you anything unless you want a coffee, but coffees are great to have.
Coffees are always great to have, and they're inexpensive, very, very good investments for information on the dollar. So
yep, right, exactly. Well, this is good. Good conversation. Yeah. Invest time and effort to get them up faster. They deserve the that great onboarding that everybody else is getting.
I totally agree. It's and it's such a huge investment, and it needs to happen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for pre-recording with me, so I could be on vacation this week before school starts for the kiddos.
Enjoy vacation. Where are you going again?
Nowhere. Back to school shopping, soccer practice. It's a staycation, but we'll be getting ready for school. Just chilling with the boys.
Love it. Just enjoy the staycation, and as usual, as always, thank you so much. There's always helpful topics to dive into.
Thank you. I look forward to the next Thursday.
You got it.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You've just experienced another episode of The CXO and CHRO Walk into a Bar, where we share insights at the intersection of talent and revenue. Thank you for joining us. Please join us next week at noon Eastern for more strategic content to help you scale your business. You can follow us on LinkedIn and on YouTube for additional content or episodes you may have missed. The links will be in the comments section. If you'd like more information or to schedule time with Michelle or Dominique, follow the link in the comments section to book time on their calendar. Until next week, cheers.